Welcome back to the Anti-Meta Meta Club. This week's Rseat is a lot of fun. It's in tuned street cars, and I have the perfect anti-meta car for you. Let's get into it. The anti-meta car of the week is the Ford GT. Simply put, if the RX Vision wasn't here, it would be the meta car. It is so good that it is almost as good as the meta car, but not quite. I managed to put it in 29th place with a 56.4, putting me in 3rd place when it comes to the Ford GT. As you can see, Drifter got a very good time. I think that it's probably possible to still get this in the top 10, at least for now. As you can see, the RX Vision is everywhere. The LFA, I think, is a close 3rd, and a few of the other cars are still worth using. I'm starting the lap a little bit early, so I can add right now that you want to be using +5 brake balance as well as weak ABS, or at the very least, that's what I used for this. Looking at the number boards on the left, right about at the 300 foot board is when you want to hit the brakes. Brake in a straight line down to 3rd gear, and at the 100 board, we're going to start turning in. It's okay if you go over the high part of this curb. Since it's a street car, the suspension is pretty soft, and it's not really going to upset the balance of the car too much if you do go over it like I did right there. Obviously, we want to get on the throttle as early as we can, so make sure you use all of this colored curb runoff. You can put just your right tires barely on that curb, and you're going to be fine. Going up the S here, I like to hug the curb, stay all the way on the curb, all the way to the end of it, and then get kind of a late apex here. What that accomplishes, it allows me to turn and then stop turning, straighten out the wheel a little bit as early as possible so I can get as much pure acceleration without turning too much and causing too much friction. Leading up to the bus stop, of course, keep your eyes on the left to look for the number boards, and I like to brake about 2 car lengths before the 300 foot board, but I braked right at it, or a little bit before it this time, which was too late. Immediately trail braking in 4th gear, I should be extremely close to that inside barrier, but as you can see, I understeered a little bit and did not come nearly close enough to it. I like to come off the brakes almost entirely as I jump over the curb. What happens if you have too much brake pressure is your car can dive, and by that I mean the weight can move forward really violently, and that can actually pull you all the way to the right. And if you see people slide off and crash on the right side of the track right there, it's probably because they have too much brake pressure as they go over the first bump. Resume the brake pressure you had and then turn in and trail brake just a little bit. I only downshifted there specifically so I can get the car to rotate because I had a weird angle. You don't necessarily need to downshift there if you hit the entry right, but don't be afraid to do so. Make sure you shift back up to 4th before you get on that throttle. I'm leaving it paused here because I want you to look at that white line. As long as you have both of your right tires on the right side of that white line, you're actually going to have a perfectly clean exit through there. It's not going to give you a penalty. If you find yourself understeering on exit, you can either wait for the car to settle and then add more steering, or you can lift off the throttle sharply to get the weight to transfer to the front really quickly and give you a little bit more grip in the front. Once again, paying attention to the white line as the track limit, if you change the weight balance by turning your car before you go over this curb, it should set you up to continue rotating as you hit the pavement again. Once the car is settled on the pavement, immediately get on the brakes extremely gently. You can see how little brake pressure I'm using. Downshift to 3rd to tuck the nose in, back up to 4th, and then use just as much throttle as you need to make sure you don't quickly go into the grass. Keep yourself off the grass, but then as soon as you apex, get on that throttle all the way. And as you can see from my steering, I'm trying to find the grip. Keep turning in and then unwinding the steering until the car wants to grip up. Staying in 4th gear, move to the right side of the track and look for the 200 foot board on the right. Right before that, you're going to hit the brakes. Never reaching 100% braking, we're going to downshift to 3rd and immediately start trail braking in. Continue bleeding off speed and turning in, staying really close to the inside of the corner. Once you feel the car finally rotating to the point where you can get it to apex, you're going to come entirely off the brakes, turn in one final time, and then gently get back on that throttle in 3rd gear. It's okay to use this exit curbing, but be very careful you don't touch the grass. It can pull you all the way off into that wall. Looking for the 100 board that kind of correlates with the Gran Turismo sign that you see on the left in the grass, we're going to brake about 2 car lengths before the 100. Turn in, get down to 3rd gear right before the 100 board, and then you're going to come off the brakes a little bit earlier than usual because going uphill and continuing to turn will actually continue to decelerate the car before it's time to get on the throttle. You can see that I'm blipping the throttle just a little bit because I'm trying to get the nose tucked in without causing any oversteer. Oversteer here is really bad. It'll kill your momentum, especially since it's uphill. You want to make sure that if you do get on that throttle too early and you start oversteering, you've got to correct it as early as possible and make sure you do not hit the grass. On the barrier to the left are number boards, and right after the 200 foot board, we're going to hit the brakes. Brake in a straight line until you get to the 100 foot board, and then we're going to start turning in, staying in 3rd gear. Continue trail braking all the way up on the curb, apexing about in the middle of the corner. You've got to make sure that you apex late enough that when you get on the throttle, you can continue turning and you don't go all the way past this exit curbing. The curbing can be really tricky because it is slippery, and if you go past it, you will get a penalty. Make sure the car is stable before moving all the way to the right. Align yourself with the grass and then look for the 100-foot board. You're going to brake right before it. We're not going to brake 100% because you need to immediately start trail braking. You're going to want to come off that brake a lot earlier than you might expect, or at least come off it mostly. Hit a late apex, but you never want to be too far away from the inside, and when you get on the throttle, you might oversteer. If you do, correct it fast and make sure you don't get in that grass. Staying aligned on the right, we're going to look for two specific number boards. First, we're going to look for the 200. In between the 200 and the 100, we're going to lift off and turn in, and you want to start hitting the brakes just a little bit at the 100. Staying in fourth gear, making sure that you're going to hit this inside curb. You want to get on the throttle actually earlier than I did. You'll be able to see that I didn't use all of the runoff curbing, and that definitely cost me a little bit of time, but probably not too much. Move to the left early so you can straighten your car out before you hit the brakes, and right before the change in the barrier to the left is when you want to hit the brakes, downshift to third, but immediately get back up to fourth so third gear doesn't slow you down too much. You want to get all the way up on this curb before getting on that throttle, and be very careful you continue steering so you don't hit this wall. It's very easy to hit this wall. I actually threw away a really good lap, just a few laps before I did this one, by hitting that wall. Another bonus to this car is for the final stretch, you do not need to shift. Like I said before, don't be afraid to use the high part of the curb. You're going to see that I go over it just a little bit and it doesn't seem to upset the balance of the car. Being able to go over that higher part means that you have a little bit more track, and that means that you can steer less, brake less, get on the throttle earlier, all that good stuff. I talked about setting up so you can get a late apex on this left-hander. It's not actually that late. You just want to make sure you don't hit it early so you're not understeering into that wall to the right. And for this exit curb, you want to make sure that you're staying really close to it, if not all the way on it. It saves you a little bit of time if you stick really close to the right. Street cars like to rotate. You can use the brakes and the bumps to get the car to rotate. I used the downshift there just because I had a weird entry, but don't be afraid of the car rotating. Even when the car is sliding, you're still in control of it. For this long right-hander, you can see the tire marks on the track. You can actually go a lot tighter than the tire marks are there, and you can get on the throttle earlier than you might imagine because of it. If you find yourself understeering on this left-hander, you're probably going to 100% brake while turning in. These cars are not really capable of using the magic ABS as much as the race cars, so make sure you're just not braking at 100% as you turn in. For the last bit of deceleration going up this corner, I want you to note that you're actually still decelerating the car actively by adding that last little bit of steering after you come off the brakes. You're actually still trail braking, you're just not using the brakes. If you struggle with this right-hander, I want you to note that we're braking at the 200-foot board, but we're not turning in until the 100-foot board. A lot of people don't see them as separate things, but oftentimes they are absolutely separate, especially when you're going fast. The elevation is a bit strange on this corner, on top of it being a really tight corner, so when you get on the throttle, it is very likely that you're going to slide in some way. Just be prepared for it. Keeping up your speed through this and making sure you use all of the runoff is very important, and it's also important to balance out the car before hitting the brakes and making sure you're straight before you hit the brakes on the final right-hander. If you're facing the fence and you hit the brakes, you're probably going to drive directly at the fence after understeering, so be really careful about your trajectory. I actually had some pretty good races with this car today during the stream, but I didn't record the best ones, and the one that I did record was pretty good, but it wasn't great. I really wanted to show what this car could do specifically against the meta car, and to my luck, it was almost all RX Visions and LFAs. It was only myself and a Supra who were in anything else. I want to give a shout out to my friend Iqbal, who is S Loeb in 14th place. I asked him to do a drift project with me weeks ago, and then I have not had the time to actually do it with him. He's one of my very favorite people in the Gran Turismo community. He's a fantastic drifter, fantastic driver, and he's a good friend. So I just want to give him a shout out. You can see his link to, I think, his Instagram, but he's all over every social media. He's on Twitter, he's on YouTube. Give him a follow, find him. He's amazing. We love him. This is the fourth or fifth iteration of this type of race where we have these tuned cars that were tuned by PD that we don't actually have access to. And this time there's an additional car that we didn't have before. Actually, I think there are two additional cars we didn't have before, as well as a notoriously missing M3. The M3 was the meta car last time by a lot, with the LFA being a close second. They removed the Ford GT the very first time they gave us this combination because it was so incredibly OP that it made everything else look silly. Now, the meta car since then hasn't been that crazy, and in fact it's actually pretty close right now, but it's definitely the RX Vision. The RX Vision is absolutely crazy this week. Since there's no actual pit stop needed, there's no tire wear multiplier, there's no fuel multiplier, with only 7 laps making it very short, The only strategy that you can really do is placing your car in the right place, learning how to drive it real fast, and choosing your car based on the track and your opponents. The LFA is very strong, but it definitely doesn't have the same top speed as the Ford GT, and since it doesn't have the same power in the slipstream. And the slipstream is set to, I think it's set to weak. Actually, I don't know if it's set to weak. What's really funny about Gran Turismo 7 slipstream is weak means it's actually extremely strong and has like a really great distance. But anyways, the slipstream is ridiculous. People are going to be able to catch up to you from probably an entire half second behind. So you've got to be really wary of people coming up behind you. But yeah, that's why I chose the Ford GT. The Ford GT is hilarious in the slipstream, and it's fast enough to defend against other cars that are in your slipstream. It also handles really well. Tire wear, fuel aren't really important whatsoever, so you can really just send it everywhere. Now, because this race is so incredibly short, you're going to find people pretty desperate to either defend or make up positions. And so you're going to have a lot of people fighting tooth and nail right at the very beginning, which is usually going to lead to some incidents, and you're definitely going to see some of those. One of the biggest things I want you to pay attention to is choosing when you want to pass people. You're under no obligation to pass people just because you have a run on them. You can choose to bump draft someone, and it doesn't mean you've got to stay behind him the entire time. The reason I'm saying this is it's much better to be behind someone leading into T1 than it is to be in front of them, because pretty much every single car is going to be able to get in front of any other car that's in front of them at the end of this straight-ish. It's not a straight, but it's a full throttle section. A big advantage the RX Vision seems to have over the Ford GT is through this sector. Both cars can stay full throttle, but trying to change directions seems to slow down the Ford GT a lot more than it slows down the RX Vision. With that said, if you're fully behind one and you've got momentum coming up on it, it won't be an issue to pass it into the bus stop. It's just that when you're really close, you're probably always going to lose out on any kind of side-by-side battle going up through the S's. When I mentioned the desperation, this is exactly what I was talking about, and I got extremely lucky that the one car that needed to ghost did. I got really unlucky that Ollie Loves a Drink was not paying any kind of attention, and he hit me so hard on the inside that I went all the way into the grass and got this penalty. Now, as I'm negotiating this corner, I want you to pay attention to this person to my right named Demos, because I do something controversial, and after reviewing everything, I don't feel nearly as bad. Now you can see him going for an inside move right here, but he understeers, hits that car as well as me, and then just continues going. The thing about that is he would not have the ability to make that corner the way that he did if he didn't run into both of us. He bounced off us and kind of took advantage of Gran Turismo's weird bouncy physics. You may have seen me hit pause in the middle of the burning of the penalty, and that's because when you pause, you actually go slightly less. It's an old trick, and it's barely useful, but anytime I get a penalty that I feel is unfair, I use that little trick. I don't know if it's ever saved me any real time, but it's my one little way to fight back against the completely broken penalty system. I got pushed off track and got a penalty for it. Going to this next corner, unfortunately, Poet slowed down a lot more than I expected him to, and I gave him a little bit of a bump, but luckily it didn't send him off into the wall, and because he had the slipstream, possibly, he was able to stay really close to Iqbal, so it didn't really matter, it didn't really ruin his race, and I did lift to make sure I didn't continue hitting him, but I did feel bad about giving him that little bump. It's really important to make sure that you're giving people in front of you ample space, especially if you don't know the people. You might not know that they're going to be pretty slow at a certain corner, or that they're just checking up because of people in front, and if multiple people check up, then you end up getting that concertina effect, that accordion effect, and it can be really dangerous. So I was lucky that I didn't cause any more damage to Poet like that. As you can see from that interaction too, because he had this slip partially, and also because the RX Vision is simply better through that sector, there's nothing I could do despite the fact that I had a better run and I was right next to him. Feeling bad enough about giving Poet that bump before, I actually thought that I had run him off the road at this next corner when I went for a pass. You'll see what I'm doing here. I found that most people brake really early for this corner, so I always go for an inside pass if it looks like I have space, and I unfortunately went over the grass. I thought that Poet had adjusted his line and gone off because it looked like I was going to hit him, but after reviewing the replay, he actually braked incredibly late and just understeered on his own. I got really lucky. If he didn't understeer there, and he had turned in normal, giving me the ample amount of space, I could have still hit him because I bounced off that grass, so I was actually really lucky that he made that mistake. Now, once again, I've got to shout out my friend. I usually wouldn't go for a move like this on a buddy of mine, but he's such a good driver that I figured that he'd be able to give me a really good battle, and that's exactly what he did. I don't think I've ever gotten a chance to drive against him side by side, so I really wanted to give him everything I could. A lot of times friends will just kind of let me go because they know that I'm working on a project or I'm trying to look cool on stream or something like that. But I really respect when people give me a really good fight, especially when it's someone who is such a good driver like him. Racing reminds me a lot of my life as a martial artist. I taught martial arts for about 14 years and I've been practicing martial arts my entire life. And one thing that a lot of people do, especially at the beginning, is they don't want to hurt their friends when they're sparring, but what they don't realize is they're robbing their friends of an opportunity to learn how to actually defend themselves against someone who may actually be trying to hurt them. So if you're in martial arts, you have to try to hurt your friends. And if you're racing your friends, you have to try to pass them because you want them to learn to defend against such things, especially your fast friends. If you want to get better with your friends, then you've got to do everything you can to destroy them, and you're both going to benefit from it. Now, this interaction was really interesting to me. I don't know if it was the timing of the bump, but the bump seems like it didn't do anything between the two metacars, and in fact, it slowed down one enough that I could actually get through and cleanly pass him in the bus stop. I actually was really impressed by his control and maintaining his line through there, and I was really lucky to stick with Demos here. At least I thought I was lucky until we got to this. This is what I was talking about before. Now, I went in for an inside pass, I braked at the same time, but he put himself at an angle that I didn't have any room. I went in the grass again, which made me bounce closer to him and then run into him. Like I mentioned in the past, I hate including races where there's any kind of incident, especially if it's controversial, and I actually didn't know if I was in the right or wrong initially. I knew that I couldn't do anything after I hit the brakes, but I also thought maybe I shouldn't have been going for that pass, so I went back and looked, and I did indeed brake at the same time as I did for all the other inside passes there. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt and just assume that that was a weird line that he took, that he just cuts in after braking in super late, but I didn't really know, so I wanted to look at his replay. He does angle himself down as soon as it looks like I'm going for the pass, and there's just nothing I can do to avoid him. But again, that could be his line, so I wanted to look at all the other times he took that corner. Looking at the next lap, he does actually angle himself in a little bit, but strangely enough, when he's by himself, he has enough space for a car. Again, on the next lap, he strangely breaks into that corner every single time, leaving enough space for a car, except for the time when I was there, and yeah, he's the same guy who also ran into and bumped off of me and the other driver, and then took that position and ran. And as you can see from lap 2, he can actually negotiate that corner while I specifically am passing him on the inside without running into me, so I absolved myself from any kind of wrongdoing. I no longer care. Sorry. Going back to the race, watching him disappear into my rear view, like I said before, I don't actually mind at all. I think that he was actually doing it maliciously to try to make sure that I made contact, and if people are going to move under braking like that, then I absolutely have no patience for him, and I don't feel bad at all. Because of the absolutely ridiculous slipstream, people at the front tend to stay together. It's usually little packs of people that kind of split up. And I got really lucky that this specific group of people ended up staying together because I have no clue what actually happened. But that driver ended up in the wall and this other driver ended up with a penalty because of it. I actually don't know whose fault it is. I'm not going to assume either were at fault. It could have just been a mistake. But what I do know is that gave me 2 free positions, and that leaves only myself and one other driver to fight for victory. Jumping forward to the final lap, I want to show you exactly how crazy the slipstream is with this car, especially against the other car that could have been the anti-meta, but ended up not being quite strong enough. Entering turn 1, I was 7/10 faster than him, and you don't really have to worry about dirty air as much. You still have to think about it because it will give you a little bit of aero wash. But up this section, if you're by yourself, you should be able to just reap the benefits of the crazy slipstream because by the first braking zone after that full throttle section, I'm less than 3/10 away from him. I couldn't recall if I'd ever driven against him before, but since it's our first time, I wanted to just give him the benefit of the doubt. If I can trust him and I can pull off some kind of move, then I might have a win here. If I trust him and he does me dirty, then I guess I'll at the very least know. And really, that's what you kind of expect. So when I went for that inside pass, not only did it feel really good that he gave me space, but it also kind of really showed me that I wasn't exactly in the wrong before when I went for that inside pass or the other ones before. Because I did the exact same thing, braked at the same time, and he knew I was there, gave me space, and not only that, he successfully defended against me. He gave me space, and still I didn't run away with it immediately. It took another corner, and actually even one more here to really solidify it. I had to get all the way in front of him, move over to the inside, but I really enjoyed racing against this guy. He was incredibly clean. I didn't have anything to worry about, and he was also really good. It's so satisfying when you can pull off a pass against a clean and good driver because you really have to earn it, and that is the real reason that I love racing. The race wasn't over by a long shot here. We still had, what, 2 corners left, but it did look like he kind of gave up. I'm not sure if he did, or if the LFA just wasn't strong there, or if he just didn't have it locked down. Either way, I was really happy by this point because I started in 15th. It's been a long time since I've been able to start that deep, especially in an actual competitive lobby, and then pull off the win. So it felt extremely good doing it in EMEA and having such a good battle with that guy at the very end. Shout out to him and shout out to the other guys who gave me a clean battle. It was a really fun race, and I really hope they bring back this car combination, but with longer races. It's ridiculous that it's so short. We have 15 minutes to wait between races. This race could be 3, 4, or even 5 laps longer, and people would still have time. PD, if you're listening, please keep doing races like this, but make them longer. Nudge and I would like to thank you for watching my video. If you liked what you saw, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, I'll be making another one of these videos every single week. I'm going to leave you with a look at all of my current members. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate all of you. Say goodbye, Nudge.